What should we call it? Not what should we do about it. What should we call it? Oh, you're picking up mid-conversation. We've got to open a coaching search consultation service. It's very, very obvious. It's become crystal clear to me over the past few days/weeks that all the wrong questions are being asked and the right ones aren't being asked, and some people that probably shouldn't have their hands on the wheel have their hands on the wheel of various coaching searches. So, I don't know, maybe that's a spring project, Jesse. Just come up with an acronym. We need a good name. The rest of it will take care of itself. We need a good name. We're jam-packed. We're high atop a sparkling downtown Nashville, Tennessee tonight. Someone tells me big meteor shower on tap tonight. That was the talk of the staff today. Not week 8 predictions or week 9 predictions or hot seats. We were talking about meteor showers. Not on the show tonight, though. But we do have the JP poll on the show tonight. We do have week 9 predictions. We do have a ton of hot seat talk. I've got some coaching search updates. We've got best bets. I've got a badly strained neck. I'm all hopped up on 14 kinds of medication. The staff, foolishly, thinks that means the show will be less than an hour tonight. I took the over. We will see how it goes. I can tell you confidently, because it says it right here, they're watching us in Lawrenceville, Georgia, Suffolk, Virginia, not to be confused with Norfolk, Abilene, Texas, and Guin, Alabama. Does everyone know how to pronounce it? Those of you familiar with the 74 super outbreak of tornadoes know it is Guin, Alabama. Know your tornado outbreaks, people. It always comes in handy. And one more thing that could come in handy for us as we are presenting America's College Football Show to you here tonight is make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We have passed the 450,000 threshold, which means we are on a terminal trajectory now, which makes it sound worse than it really is, towards 500K. And we want to get there before Thanksgiving because we want to be thankful for hitting 500K. On top of, friends and family and wellness and whatnot, 500K is a very, very nice thing to be thankful for. Get us there. Please get us there. I have both hands clasped on air. Get us there. And if you think you're subscribed, check and make sure you are. And then if you are, thank you. Now it's time to steal 4 of your buddies' phones and make sure they're subscribed because it doesn't sign them up for anything and it's free. So it's a victimless crime. It's not even a crime per se. It's just an action. And are we against action on this show? Absolutely no, we are not. All right, let's dive into the show tonight. It is prediction night. Okay, so we got some big games this weekend. We're going to be at Vandy for Missouri Vanderbilt. But in the meantime, I'm going to start the show tonight with some hot seat talk because there's a lot of rumblings, a lot of whispers out there. You take the old plastic cup, you put your ear to the ground, and you're hearing some things. You're hearing some things about Hugh and Auburn. That's where I'm going to start. It feels like the job is on the line Saturday. That's what it feels like to me. There are some people around the program who feel that way. Now, I want to stress that there's a lot of fluidity to this stuff with many of these coaching searches. It's not always as cut and dry as if this happens, then that will happen. It's just not paint by numbers. A lot of times it is spaghetti plotted. And so when you have 15 different mouths in the room with 15 different opinions and thoughts on things, a.k.a. when it's a major college football job we're talking about, then that's the way it can be sometimes. I was looking at Justin Hokanson, friend of the program, over at auburnsports.com today, and he was talking about what would go into this. And firstly, they're 3-4, so they could just win out and go 8-4, and it's a moot point. They could also lose Saturday. And Hugh Freeze could be out of a job, and it may not even take until the end of the season. And I happen to lean towards that happening, not rooting for it, happen to lean towards that happening as just a matter of what's most likely. But what Hokanson mentioned and what needs to be restated over and over and over again is it's one thing to think that in the abstract. Okay, drill down on the specifics, because this is where I think the Auburn situation is at right now. Not everyone who needs to be on board with making a move is on board. And then if they're on board with the general principle of making a move, well, then they need to be on board with paying the buyout. And to be on board with paying the buyout, they need to have a follow-up plan. You don't just go and fire somebody and then say, well, now what? Nope, can't do that. The now what already has to be figured out before the firing part gets figured out, because you don't just get to fire someone and say, thanks, turn in your keys before you leave. You got to pay them tens of millions of dollars. So you better have a good plan. Ideally, you have a plan that would upgrade you from your previous situation. Now, I know if you're new to college football or you've been watching it your whole life, this sounds commonsensical. It is. It's not always inside these athletic departments. Let's just remember that. So they need alignment to make the move. Nothing aligns people behind paying a lot of money to get rid of someone like losing football games. So if that happens Saturday against Arkansas, I think you're going to see those wheels in motion. And then I think you'll probably hear John Summerall's name. You may hear James Franklin's name mentioned there. I happen to lean John Summerall. Like, I viewed that as the favorite to get that job if it comes open. And until proven otherwise, that's the name I'm going to go with. But it's not the only name involved. And I think part of the dilemma that they may have there actually is there are more than a few names involved in the decision-making process that have more than just one or two names themselves that they want as forefront of the coaching search. And then you got to figure out how the search is going to happen. So, yeah, that's where I think the Hugh Freeze situation is right now. Win, and it silences all of this. Lose Saturday, and I think it's actually in motion, and I think it's going to happen. And candidly, I thought that may be the situation against Missouri. But you do need to remember, like, Auburn has had two games, the Oklahoma game and the Georgia game, where a lot of their people look and say, officials cost us those games. We were good enough to win them. Officials cost us those games. Well, if you were to flip those, they're a 5-2 team. I know that's not the way football works, but there's a big difference in what's happening, with Florida State, where it's just totally dead on arrival, versus Auburn was competitive against Oklahoma. They were competitive against A&M. They were competitive against Georgia. They were competitive against, these are all competitive games. They haven't mailed the season in. But at some point, you may run out of gas and it may get mailed in. And if that's Saturday, then I think we know what's going to happen. Next up, what's the latest with Mike Norvell at Florida State? I know they put out the statement yesterday. I don't care. I still think they're going to move on from him. I just don't think they're moving on from him this week. And as of 72 hours ago, I thought it may even be this week. So we're talking semantics here. I think it's going to happen. I think you got another situation, which obviously you can't have, and that is a second year in a row, the team just looks dead. And I promise you, if you weren't up late enough to watch the Stanford game, it was really, really tough to watch. So and then there were reports around the team and around the program about players just kind of being ambivalent, just kind of being nonchalant about it. Well, that's because they've tapped out. And they've tapped out because they're not really Florida State players. They're really mercenaries. If we just cut right to it, that's been the problem there. If we cut right to why there's no real foreseeable pulling up of the nose in the future, it's because their talent profile is not rooted in high school recruiting. It's just, all right, we got through last year. Let's go get a new crop of players out of the portal for this year. That doesn't work. That's not sustainable. So it is going to cost a ton of money to buy him out. So copy-paste what I just said about Auburn. That's kind of what you hear around Florida State right now is, do we have a plan? Do we have an action plan? And there's another question that a lot of people who are going to write those checks want to know before they write the check, and that is, who do we know we're going to be able to get? And oftentimes that question's not able to be answered. And it's very uncomfortable to write checks for tens of millions of dollars on the chance that you might get the guy you want. And then the question is, well, who's the guy they want? Look, the question around Florida State, and Florida really, since it's open right now too, but the question around Florida State, if it comes open, is who can recruit the state of Florida? How about that? You want to talk about the characteristics that you need, and you want to talk about what needs to be proven. Hey, most of the guys whose names are going to be involved are good football coaches. They'd be good clinicians. They can really chalk you to death. They can call plays if that's what you need them to do. They can hire good coordinators. Your name wouldn't be in the running if you couldn't do that. Who can stack recruiting classes where they turn the transfer portal from a lifeline to just a supplement tool, maybe a luxury, maybe some cherries on top of the roster here and there, like the other big boys do. Hey, once you find someone who can do that, I'll trust that they can coach them up plenty good enough when they get there. So that's the candidate pool at Florida State. What about LSU? Different story here because LSU still got all their goals in front of them. They're a 5-2 team right now. A 2-loss team won the national title last year. Now, a lot of you are laughing when I say that because the implication would be that LSU's got to win out, and you don't think they're going to beat A&M and Alabama and Arkansas and Oklahoma. I don't either, but they could. So we don't we're not in the business of firing guys who we think are probably going to lose some games if they're 5-2 right now, and we got a lot of money sunk into them, and that's Brian Kelly. So I don't think we're there yet, but this is the job I hinted at in the preseason. Remember, there was one of them I was talking about where I said some of these places, like Auburn, Hugh Freeze was on the hot seat. Sam Pittman was on the hot seat. A lot of these guys, Billy Napier, like a lot of these guys who have since lost their jobs or maybe on the way to losing their jobs, their names were already being thrown around. Brian Kelly's wasn't, but I had a fairly strong feeling that it could go from not on the hot seat at all to fired in the span of one season. I still believe that. We've actually trended a lot more towards that. But they're not close to firing him yet. What they are close to doing is demanding that he make some changes internally, and I would especially apply that to if they struggle again offensively Saturday at home, at night, against A&M, then he's going to have to change things offensively on his staff. And I don't really know that that's much more than rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic at that point, but I think he'll be asked to do that. I think it will be demanded of him. He's got every right to say no. He is the head coach. What happens if that comes to pass? But you got to understand, if you're around LSU, you know what I'm saying is true. If you're not around LSU, if you're a Minnesota fan, congrats again on the Nebraska game. But if you're a Minnesota fan and you're just watching this from several states away, Brian Kelly doesn't have much equity built up. Let me rephrase. Brian Kelly has no equity left with the LSU fan base. This is the byproduct of coming into Louisiana and not embracing Louisiana. Longtime viewers of the show will know, I sound like I'm reading off a prompter, but if you've watched the show for a long time, you will know that I've kept mentioning that. There's a reason I've kept mentioning that. It matters. It matters anywhere you go. Some places it matters more than others. And LSU, it matters more than others. There's a very, very unique sense of pride that people take there from understanding what makes Louisiana State different and what makes coaching there different and what makes understanding that state and embracing it different than coaching at Louisville or somewhere like that. No knock on Louisville. Brian Kelly never embraced that. Now, the catch to that was if he came in there and won doing it his way, no one was going to speak publicly. They may whisper behind the scenes. They were never going to speak publicly about it. However, the moment he did not win, the volume was going to get turned up on that. And the volume is being turned up on it. And Brian Kelly never built any goodwill with the people down there. He had never really embraced Louisiana at all. Thought that he could do it the same way there that he did it at Notre Dame. And some people get competitively stubborn enough to think that way. Hey, the formula for success is the formula for success. And I could apply it just as certainly at Oregon as I could at Notre Dame, as I could at Arizona, as I could at LSU. Well, in some ways that's true. You know, you block and tackle the same way here as you do there, but that's not what college football really is. That's not what college football is at all. So Brian Kelly's found that out down there, and they're going to want changes. A lot of the fan base wants a change at the top, but at the very least internally, they're going to want changes offensively, structurally, and I got to say, I still think it may trend towards ending poorly, but it's a big check to write, and they don't have a university president there right now, so it's a very politically complicated matter. But winning football games takes care of it all. You beat A&M Saturday, you're 6-2, you go into the bye week, and then you're going into Tuscaloosa with everything to play for. So again, this conversation could be muted very quickly, but it could also be amplified very quickly. So we're really on a razor's edge right now, I would say, with the LSU job. The Wisconsin job fascinates me. So Wisconsin hired Luke Fickell, and most people, myself included, thought it was a brilliant hire. That I thought that Wisconsin had really gotten themselves serious about winning in the Big Ten, and it has not worked. And I don't think it's failed to work because Fickell's not a good coach. I actually think Luke Fickell's a really good football coach. I think he hired poorly out of the gate, and he's paying the price for that right now. And it is an identityless team 3 years in, and it's not going to fix itself overnight. So the question you have to ask yourself is, well, do we just want to cut bait, fire him, and start over? Or do we believe in the hire we made, and are we willing to accept that he himself made some poor hiring decisions, but we're going to give him a chance to sort of start over? It's basically the shock panel approach. Do we pay the money to buy a guy out, or do we rub the panels together, clear, hit him on the chest, resurrect him one more time, bring him back to life, and then take the money we would have paid him for the buyout and infuse it into NIL, a.k.a. what Florida did last year. It did not work out for Florida. They still ended up firing Napier. Remains to be seen what would happen if Wisconsin chose to do this, but it does look like that may be the route they want to go right now. Again, if they get blown out 59-3 at Oregon Saturday, and then Washington comes and hits them over the head at home, maybe that changes the mood. So that's where we are on the hot seat front right now. I think the Wisconsin job's interesting because I go back to this. I go back to this generic mentality when people try and describe jobs. And they're always describing jobs through, like I just said, a very generic lens. How good is the Wisconsin job? Well, it's not as good as job A, but it's better than job B. You don't know because you're not the specific candidate. There are specific candidates out there, like Kenny Dillingham views Arizona State infinitely above and beyond that which the normal person would. Clark Lee views Vanderbilt way above and beyond in terms of job quality what most people would. That doesn't mean anyone else would feel that way, but it doesn't matter because they got the right guys to feel that way about their programs. Well, what if there's someone out there that, for whatever reason, has Wisconsin according to their personal interest as a top 5 job? You don't know that that doesn't exist. In fact, I would suggest it may very well exist out there. So you can't know what the candidate pool is because you can't really know that everyone views the jobs the exact same way, is all I'm saying. And all you need is one. Like they didn't need 15 Kenny Dillinghams at Arizona State. They didn't need 15 Clarks at Vandy. They needed one. And each of those found them. So maybe Luke Fickell still is that guy. Or if he's not, maybe there is a random other candidate out there that is that guy, and remains to be seen. Remains to be seen. Those four words are pretty evergreen this time of year. As is Quick Trip, although there is no green in the logo. As you can see that beautiful red square there, that is the QT logo. I was taken back the other night, Jesse, to our commitment ceremony that we had last spring. And those of you who are new around here, you see Quick Trip plastered all over the place, and many of you have proudly stopped there to support the brand and to fill your tanks and to fill your tummies with cold brew on tap, maybe even some food. And Quick Trip, once upon a time, was just one of many convenience stores / gas stations that were vying for our commitment. We decided that that's the route we wanted to go. We were on the road all the time, and we thought it smart to partner with one of these brands. And it came decision day, and we were still in the old building, and I had 4 of the finalists. I had the hats right there out in front of me. And we committed to Quick Trip, and we've never looked back. We have not even thought about the portal. We have not thought about decommitting. They have not thought about decommitting. If anything, the relationship's gotten a lot deeper and a lot stronger to the point where I text inappropriate things to Quick Trip Joe all the time, and he does it right back to me. We could both get each other fired a million times over. That's the kind of relationship you want with your partners. And so I humbly suggest that you stop by Quick Trip whenever you're on the road. We will Saturday because we're going back to Vandy. The Fall Don't Lie tour is headed right back over to Vanderbilt Stadium. Missouri is in town. Eli Drinkwitz famously winless when we're in the building watching him. So he's got that to overcome. We'll predict the game later in the show. The latest Fall Don't Lie t-shirt is available in the Pate State store, patestateMaterial.com. How about the Fall Don't Lie tour at Nashville? Whom stood a thunk we would have had a Nashville shirt, much less 2 Nashville shirts in there. We ought to get a Nashville sign on the set, Jesse. That'd be a smart thing to do. All right, let's move on. We have games to predict. Bradley, could you take this camera over here for just a second? One thing's bothering me. No, the other one, sorry. I don't even know what numbers they are. Yeah. Okay, we're good. That's all I wanted to correct. Texas A&M at LSU, Saturday, 7:30 Eastern kickoff. It's a night game in Tiger Stadium. Now, some of these things are overrated and overstated. But LSU is 20-1 at night in Tiger Stadium under Brian Kelly. And shame on these people for talking about firing him. Well, there is a follow-up, unfortunately, on this piece of paper in front of me. Brian Kelly, also 5-10 in ranked games. Not all of them were at night in Tiger Stadium, though. So this is the 5th straight game for A&M. Back-to-back road stretch, second leg of a back-to-back road stretch. There's a lot of noise around LSU. Okay, well, how do we quiet that? Well, we quiet that by winning a football game. And it is a classic here we go again situation for LSU. Jesse, I don't know how many LSU previews we've done this year. Every single one of them starts the same way. So I'm just trying to reinvent ways to talk about the same thing with LSU. So here's what I've landed on. Are we going to go sugar high LSU, or are we going to go sustainable LSU offensively? Because they haven't had a 100-yard rusher this season. So very notably, LSU has not been able to run the ball, and very notably, it has tilted their offensive profile towards that of being a very pass-heavy team. The problem is their quarterback is far less than 100%. And so, when they call plays, one of the things that has Joe Sloan under fire down there as the offensive coordinator is it almost looks like you're just calling plays for the sake of calling plays. There's no rhythmic nature to it. There's no design to it. I'm not stupid enough to think that they don't actually have a plan or there's not actually design behind it. What I do believe is matchup-wise, the LSU staff is probably being outmatched by other defensive staffs. If I'm right about that, which I think I am, it doesn't get any easier. It's Mike Elko and his staff coming to town. So you've got your left tackle out if you're LSU, and yet you've still got to find a way to grind out some yards. Just any way possible. Can you achieve offensive balance? Can you make them respect the fact that you can run the ball? You're 117th in rush yards per game. And because of that, that leads to the fact that, and this is another paper popper, LSU has the lowest play action rate in the SEC. Why is that, kids? Well, because nobody thinks you can run the ball, so it's a waste of time to run play action. So not only can your quarterback not really throw it at his full potential, everybody knows when he's going to throw it too. So it's no coincidence that the offense stalls consistently. And if it's 3rd and 5+, if it's a bunch of obvious passing downs again, third paper pop here, A&M is 10th in pressure rate and 4th in sacks. And your left tackle's out. Did I mention that? Yes, I did. It doesn't hurt to mention it again. Now, LSU does have something going for him here, and that is two things, actually. Number one, it's college football. So desperation and talent can do some funny things to someone's performance. Number two, LSU's really good at busting the huge cap-buster plays. They're 15th nationally in plays of 50-plus yards offensively. They had one last week against Vandy. Now, the dude got tackled at the 1-yard line, and with LSU, that doesn't make it a foregone conclusion that they'll finish the drive, as we saw. But if you don't get that, I'm struggling to see where LSU finds enough offensive traction to win this game. But the follow-up to that is maybe LSU's offense struggles, but maybe American hero Blake Baker and his defense comes to play. So, can A&M's offense scale at night in Death Valley against LSU's defense? By scale, I mean, for a long time on this show, we have believed good college football offenses can get totally shut down by good to great college football defenses. But the highest level college football offenses will score against anyone. They won't score 50 against anyone. But there is a certain threshold, the freeze point, if you will, past which water's going to freeze. It's just a matter of how long it takes to freeze, but it will freeze. Well, likewise, with offensive college football, past a certain point, the rules are such that you can't shut it down totally. Is Texas A&M one of those offenses? Because we've seen a couple of times this year where Auburn held them to 16, that they haven't consistently put up those big numbers against everyone. But they have the potential to. So if they play their A- or better game, question is, do they have the ability to scale that offense? And it's very multifaceted. They can run the ball well. They can throw the ball well. They've got a very dynamic dual-threat quarterback, multiple high-level pass catchers. I think the outcome here is pretty Marcel Reed dependent. I think, I watched Diego Pavia against LSU last week, and he killed them with a lot of off-structure stuff, just the Diego Pavia stuff that's not written on any play sheet or grease board, just stuff that he made happen when the original play broke down. Well, Marcel Reed can do that, but also I think they can just create chaos through structure. So in many ways, it may be the toughest challenge of the season for LSU defensively. So that's something to watch. And then Texas A&M, they have probably as good a depth of weaponry as LSU has seen all year. And LSU's seen some good receivers. I don't think they've seen a collection of pass catchers / tailbacks, some of whom can catch the ball really well out of the backfield, that Texas A&M has. So A&M's going to feature theirs. You swing back to LSU and you ask, are you guys going to feature yours? If the name of the game offensively is getting the ball in the right hands of playmakers, why doesn't LSU get the ball in the hands of their playmakers more? That kind of goes back to what I was talking about there being a lack of discernible design behind the play calling, and it just looks like you're calling plays for the sake of calling plays. And this is pretty rudimentary stuff, because I don't really question play calling on the show. I've never really done it. But philosophically, anybody can question that. You don't have to know a whole lot about football to know, hold on, so you put 11 out there, and some of them have a job of blocking, and then there's some of them who just mainly run the ball. Some of them mainly catch the ball. There's one guy who throws it or hands it off, but you're trying to score, right? Yeah. So you want to have the ball in the hands of the people that give you the best chance to score, right? Yes. This is offensive football. It really doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Sometimes when you have the kind of skill that LSU has, they've made it more complicated than that. Also, it is more complicated than that. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. FanDuel has A&M as a 2.5-point favorite right now. Our model has it at a pick'em, because our model still respects LSU. There's a lot of dynamics in play here. Remember this. So we take into account many things. We take into account that LSU is at home in a desperation spot, so they're in a do-up spot off a loss. There's a lot of noise they need to quiet, so you're going to get an all-in effort from that coaching staff this week. You're going to get a back-against-the-wall effort, we think, from that roster this week. Second time on the road in 2 weeks is always a tough spot in college football. The whole Death Valley at night thing matters. I think the model may have overweighted that a little bit, because I took all of it into account, and I still think A&M is going to win the game and cover. So give me Texas A&M to win. Give me Texas A&M to cover, and I keep sitting here saying I don't think anyone's going to go undefeated. I don't think any SEC team's going undefeated, and yet I keep picking A&M to win. So far they have. I keep picking them to win. Now, they do have some tough games after this, so maybe they'll lose at Missouri. I don't know. Are they ever going to play in College Station again? I'm going to take A&M to win. Close game, not a strong field there. Let's continue moving on. Let me take a sip of water right quick. Got the whole jug on the show tonight. Can't tell you who it is. It's Publix. We appreciate them for not sponsoring the show, although they could. All right, let's continue. Saturday at high noon Eastern time on ABC, we have Ole Miss at Oklahoma. Just banger after banger in the SEC. Is that SEC bias? No, it's just using my eyes to look at the slate, really is all it is. This feels like a college football playoff game. It really feels, it's not an elimination game. Both teams, well, especially Ole Miss, would still be very much in the hunt if they lost the game. But it feels like the winner of this one is in it for everything, and I'm not sure we're going to see the loser of this game in the postseason. That's how it feels to me. Seasons are not linear. Okay, so I was very high on Oklahoma in the preseason, and then out of nowhere, like Sting from the rafters in the 90s, I picked them to lose to Texas. And then I kind of foreshadowed a possible tough trip to Columbia last week, and everyone thinks I'm down on Oklahoma now. No. First off, Mateer got hurt. You all know that. The Texas game, for a million reasons, I thought was easy to see coming. You rebounded nicely last week, but seasons are not linear. You don't just start here and then finish here. It's very, very much up and down and up and down. You just hope to have more ups than downs. So did Ole Miss peak? Maybe Ole Miss peaked early in the season, and maybe their descent started last week, and we just don't really realize it yet. Maybe Oklahoma already dipped, and they're reascending. These things could be in the process of happening. I just think we got another ranked versus ranked matchup at 11 a.m. local time, and I'm all in for it. So Oklahoma right now, couple of things as we get into the preview that I would greatly prefer these teams invert. 2 paper pops. Oklahoma, 116th in turnover margin. Don't like that. Ole Miss, 118th in penalties. Don't like that either. So, what do we think here? Well, I assume most of the country is thinking about Lane Kiffin versus Brent Venables. I am too. but it's not where my mind goes first and foremost in this matchup. I'm thinking about Oklahoma's offense. I'm thinking about Ben Arbuckle versus Pete Golding and the Ole Miss defense. Because what John Mateer did last week was enough. He did enough. He was 18 of 26, 150 yards. But over the past 2 weeks, a critical part of his game has been kind of on mute, and that's the running portion of his game. 22 carries for 19 yards the last 2 weeks. So is that just the new normal there? Or are we going to see a breakout performance running the ball again? Not to mention, we don't really know if he's... In fact, we pretty well know he's not 100% throwing the ball yet, but hopefully you're healing towards being 100% again there. They found success running last week, and Ole Miss has the 99th ranked rushing defense in the country right now. Now, Ole Miss, that defense was on the field for 80 plays last week. This is important because that 80 plays has always been a lot to play. In the modern age of college football, when the games are more compressed and there are fewer plays being run, not many teams are on the field for 80 plays anymore. So you're going back-to-back road right here. You're in Athens last week, you're in Norman this week, and you're coming off having played 80 plays defensively, and you got an Oklahoma team here pretty desperate. Just keep that in mind, especially as that second half approaches. So here's a catch. I got several of them. The catch was, for Oklahoma, last week was good enough. Because last week you played South Carolina, and you could pretty well rest assured that if you didn't turn the ball over, if they didn't score defensively or on special teams, 20 points was probably going to be good enough, and it was more than enough. I'm not sure 20 points is good enough against Ole Miss. Could be. Defense is really good there. I would not bank on 20 points being good enough. Okay, here's a catch to that catch. Oklahoma's got the number 1 total defense in the country, number 1 overall pressure rate in the country. So maybe they will crowbar in the bicycle spokes for Ole Miss. But there is a catch to the catch to the catch. You got to follow me here. It's very high-level intellectual stuff. Ole Miss has only allowed 7 sacks all year. That's number 2 in the SEC. And Trinidad Chambliss is a lot bigger threat with his legs, plus has better weapons to achieve explosiveness than any of the aforementioned teams, especially South Carolina last week. So a lot of catches here. A lot of things that could be, but maybe not. But explosives, I think, are the padlock stat in this game. I do think when we're sitting here Sunday, especially as it relates to Ole Miss, they have to have achieved these. They are the number 9 offense in the country in explosive play rate. Oklahoma is the number 9 defense in the country in explosive play rate. Brent Venables at home with pressure against a very young quarterback. Normally doesn't work out good. And that's even if he hadn't stolen your signals. Yes, I heard it. Yes, I heard it. I heard it in the NFL. See, you think I don't watch NFL. I never miss a 49ers-Jaguars game. I never miss a 49ers press conference during a game week. So everything Lane Kiffin said earlier this week about Brent Venables, hey, man, I heard him talk about it 3 weeks ago in the NFL. He's just reading the same script. Don't let him steal your signs. I don't know what else to say. It was nice of him to let Hugh Freeze know after the fact that OU had their signals, though. That was very nice of him. This is a Ben Arbuckle game. For Oklahoma, it's a Ben Arbuckle game. Because if they can make some business happen here, especially if we can reignite the running portion of John Mateer's game, I think the game sets up fairly well for Oklahoma. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. FanDuel's got Oklahoma minus 4.5. Now, occasionally, I just flat out throw the model in the trash. And the model loves Ole Miss this week. Loves Ole Miss. In fact, we've got, so FanDuel's got Oklahoma minus 4.5. The model has Oklahoma minus 1.5. It almost makes the game a pick'em. I disagree. So all the stock everyone thinks I sold on Oklahoma, I didn't. It's just been in my pocket. I'm pulling it all out. Immunity. Give me Oklahoma to win. Give me Oklahoma to cover. We are back. We're back this week. We're back. We're a playoff contender again after this week. Do not embarrass me. They're watching us in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Fresno, California, and Winter Park, Colorado is tuned in. About to be a busy time of year in Winter Park. That's not where I'll be Saturday. I will be in Nashville, Tennessee Saturday. Why? Because the Fall Don't Lie Tour, presented by Quick Trip, is headed right back to where it headed last week. Vandy homers. We are a Vandy homer show now. Missouri coming into town, and we will be there Saturday, 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 local kickoff, just down the street from where we are right now. Bradley could ride his bike to the stadium in 5 minutes. This game kicks off on ABC at 2:30 local time. So, 2 of 6 SEC teams with 1 conference loss. That's what we have here. That's what we have on display Saturday. We got College game day in town. How about that? A lot of the guys just get to drive to the game like we do. This is another example across the SEC this week. It's the 3rd example already in the show, we're only 35 minutes in, of a team in the SEC on the 2nd leg of back-to-back road games. Make of that what you will. Which side of the mirror wins this game? It is shocking how similar these teams' profiles look. So I'm thinking to myself, you look in the mirror and the dude staring right back at you is you. And in this game's case, that's kind of team versus team. They are run-first teams with quarterback mobility. They are very, very high 3rd and 4th down conversion rate teams. They're both top 5 in the nation in those departments. They are more opportunistic than elite, I would say, defensively, but they're both top 10 in pressure rate without blitzing. So they've got dynamic enough athletes up front to get home by just bringing 4. They've both lost to Alabama, and that's it. And there's been some chatter around both head coaches for other jobs. So where's the separation here? Well, I don't know until they start to play the game. And I do have a suspicion that I'll talk about in just a second. But I don't think you need to overthink the room on this game. This is going to be some groundbreaking analysis I'm about to give you. I like the team that grabs the lead. Like I said, buckle up, because we're hitting you with the kind of analysis that you're not getting most other places. Who gets to play with the lead here? If there's so much similarity, who gets to play with the lead? They're both top 25 in first half scoring, so it could be either one. How effective is the Missouri pass rush? Because if you can get Vandy in 3rd and 5 plus, and I have a suspicion they can do it because of who they faced all year, you give yourself a lot better chance to win. And Missouri, for all the hype Diego Pavia gets, and he should get every bit of it, remember who Missouri's played this year. They've played Jalen Daniels for Kansas, and he had 10 carries for 25 yards. They've played Jackson Arnold at Auburn. He had 17 attempts for 14 yards. They have played Lenore Sellers. They held him to minus 28 yards. They've faced some mobile guys at quarterback already. Now, Diego Pavia would watch that and say, I don't care. None of them are me. They may not be. But it's not going to be a shock to Missouri's senses. I'll just say that. Could Vandy's defense be a little more vulnerable than we give them credit for against the run? Now, that's a question I don't know the answer to. Here's my concern right now if I'm going with Vanderbilt. They're number 12 in the country in run defense. Very good. Very, very respectable unit. The problem is, when you dive in a little bit, if they are vulnerable against the run, I don't know who will have exposed them. Because Bama's in the 100s in rushing numbers. LSU's in the 1-teens. South Carolina's in the 120s. Missouri can run the ball. Now, Ahmad Hardy has been a little off the last couple of weeks against Bama and Auburn relative to what he's shown he is capable of. Last 2 weeks, 36 carries for barely over 100 yards combined. And he had 100 or more in every game up until that point. So if the Missouri ground game is there, one of the things to watch early on is, are they gashing Vanderbilt very suspiciously, like the kind of thing that's not supposed to happen to a top 15 run defense? If that's the case, we may have found some openings that were always there and just hadn't been exposed yet. Or maybe Vanderbilt's number 12 run D ranking is totally legit. Got to find that out. Vandy's 103rd in the country in penalties. Missouri's 38th. Let's go to the model. Vandy minus 2.5 at FanDuel right now is the number. Ladies and gentlemen, we think the wrong team is favored. Well, by we, I mean the model. The model thinks the wrong team is favored. Now, the model last week, remember, led me to LSU. And we already had the graphics ready. And Bradley was ready to punch the button. And it was going to say on the bottom of the screen, I'm taking LSU to win and cover. And I had a change of heart right here. I don't know that it's ever happened before. had a change of heart. Something spoke to me. Who knows? Maybe someone spoke to me and said, Vanderbilt. And I took Vandy, and I looked like a genius. And Vanderbilt won, and Vanderbilt covered. Maybe I should do it again, but I'm not doing it again. I'm taking Missouri to win, and I'm taking Missouri to cover because if they win, then they have done that. And I am just going to say, as humbly but as forcefully as possible, if we go to another Missouri game and Eli Drinkwitz can't get it done, he is not the problem. We are the problem. And we will have to forsake Missouri until further notice. I think that's completely fair, okay? If we pick you, that means we believe in you. And if we believe in you and you let us down, you fool us once, strike one. Fool us twice, strike three, as Meemaw would say. Academy Sports and Outdoors has never let us down. And that's a fact. Missouri may implode in on themselves like a dying star Saturday. Or maybe they'll win. Academy will be open either way. And Academy, friend of the program, but also friend of the military and friend of first responders. And the way I know that, a rare Academy paper pop, is because on this sheet of paper in front of me, because it's written in hand by me, military and first responders get 10% off in-store and online purchases through November 11th, 11/11. Very easy to remember. 10% off. How about that? And I know good and well you guys need it anyway. What is it? Well, a number of different things they have there. Do you need a new tent? You need a new baseball bat? Do you need some big league chew? Has someone somewhere out there strategically waited until this time to get 10% off their big league chew? If you have, more power to you. In fact, I would love to talk about a business proposition with you. We'll do that off air, though. Appreciate Academy Sports and Outdoors. It is the time of the show where we have to call out some casualty. Not a casualty, casualty. Friend of the program, Todd Furman, is getting drug all over the internet, and I, as the future commissioner of this sport, cannot stand by and let this happen without participating. So Todd took to Twitter last night in front of God and everyone, and he said, and I quote, "College football parity is great until we get USF versus Georgia Tech in the first round of the playoff and nobody watches. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm an elitist, but the ratings won't lie." And I read that. And the first thing I did was I gave it 5 minutes because I thought to myself, Todd's a smart guy. Surely he'll delete that. And I came back 5 minutes later, and unfortunately it was still there, which left me no other option. You see what he said on the second line. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm an elitist. Well, I responded to Todd. Todd, you are wrong, and you are an elitist. Now, I like Todd Furman a lot. Friend of the program, friend of mine. This goes back to a couple of Meemawisms that I got to drop on his head tonight. First Meemawism is the classic buffet rule, and that is that everything is not for everyone. Most people at the buffet are going to hone in on the prime rib. Most of them are getting a cut of the prime rib. Not everyone likes candied yams, but if you like them, or if I like them, do you or I really care if anyone else likes them? In fact, in the buffet case, we would prefer no one else like them, so we get them all. Not necessarily an apples to apples or a yams to yams comparison to the way the playoff works, but my point remains, I don't care. Really, if you don't like it or anyone else likes it, as long as I like it. So the second thing, and this is kind of an evergreen statement on the show that we have to use every now and then, mainly for people we love, like Todd, is smart people say casual things. Casual people rarely say smart things. Todd Furman is not a casual. He is a very smart guy. He happens to have said a casual thing here. Now, I know the point he was trying to make. So there's a lot of truth to what he's saying. What he's saying is, hey, at its core, if USF and Georgia Tech play in the first round of the playoffs, far fewer people will watch that than if it was Ohio State, Tennessee. Well, of course, that's true. Here's the follow-up. It doesn't matter. Todd doesn't run a network, nor do I. So I don't know why he would care, nor why I would care about what our TV rating is going to be. Keep this up for just a second, Bradley. Immunity. So let's read a couple of things he said there. He said college football parity is great. I think most of us agree with that. But notice the last thing he said, ratings won't lie. Those two things are the fundamental flaw. The greatness of college football has nothing to do with TV ratings, unless you're a television executive. And if you're a television executive, if you're one of the high-level mustaches, what makes college football great to you is different than what makes it great to us. Many people who profit off this sport because of the media rights attachment don't really love the sport for the sport. They love it for the profitability. I'm not even demonizing these people. I would just greatly suggest that if you love the sport for the sport, if you grew up watching it as a kid like I know good and well Todd Fuhrman did, and like most of us did, why in the world have you divorced yourself from your own baked-in passions and loves and adopted that of a network executive? What do you care if the ratings are low? What do you care if no one watches? Question, do you enjoy it? Would you enjoy, you personally, would you enjoy watching Alex Golesh get a shot on the road on a Friday night in Atlanta against Brent Key, both of whom are in the playoffs as head coaches for the first time? Would you, Todd Fuhrman, watch that? Yes. Yes, and you text me all throughout the game because you know I'd be watching too. Why do you care if anyone else is watching? I don't. If you're enjoying something, do you ever care if anyone else is? You understand where I'm going with this, okay? We're talking about sporting events here. Keep it clean. Keep it clean. And there's an understanding with college football, even the least watched playoff game is being watched by millions of people. So if you're some kind of person who really does desire that communal feel, there are going to be millions of other people watching this game if they put it on at 3 a.m. It's not gonna match Alabama versus Michigan or anything like that, but it's going to get a pretty nice TV rating. It's going to do a lot better than Matlock's doing on TV Land. And we all know how great Matlock is. So USF Georgia Tech, if it's 40% of the audience for the biggest first-round game, but you love it, what does it matter if anyone else loves it? College football greatness is on display when the sport is on display. Like, college football greatness is when the best of the sport is on display. And that's not the same thing as high viewership, because high viewership is just when there's a mass interest that gets piqued. And a lot of times that means drawing in the casual audience, the audience that watches the big brands, the audience that couldn't tell you the name of any of the players or anything like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. And some of the high-profile matchups will draw that crowd. And then there are other matchups like this one that would be mainly for the diehards and the P1s, as we would call them, and the sickos and whatnot. That's okay. Which crowd would you rather hang out with? You're one of us. Todd Fuhrman's one of us. This tweet may not make it look like it, but Todd Fuhrman is one of us. And here's something else we know. It's a 12-team playoff. Okay, so if you get a USF in there and you get a Georgia Tech in there, that comes with the understanding that it's loaded up elsewhere with SEC and Big Ten teams. And God created the semifinals and the championship game for a reason, and it's because these teams are probably long since filtered out by that point. So you're going to get your Georgias. You're going to get your Ohio States and Texases, maybe not this year, and Alabamas. You're going to get your big brands at the end of the day. Heck, most of the first round will be made up of them. But if I'm about to sit here and listen to someone say it's a bad thing, it's to the detriment of college football, if Brent Key and Georgia Tech are playing against Alex Golesh and USF in the first round, don't let it be someone I like saying that. There are plenty enough casual-minded people out there that can spout off that nonsense. I don't need the Todd Fuhrmans of the world trafficking in that. I don't need it. Now, here's the good news for Todd. He's a really sharp guy. And he defended himself, but really, he knows he messed up on this one. And that's okay. That's okay. Because as future commissioner of this sport, if you've built up enough goodwill and equity in our community, you get a couple of mulligans. So here it is, October 21st. I think he tweeted that yesterday. So retroactive to October 20th, we have officially applied one of Todd Fuhrman's mulligans for the year. And that's it. Hands clean. And we all move on and we yell, go Jackets or go Bulls come December. Watch that matchup happen now. Well, just watch it happen. If it happens, does he attend the game? Do we get him credentialed? Does he come to the game with us? Our balls are in his court. What's going to happen at Florida? Sorry, Bradley. Yeah, I'm moving on now. What's going to happen at Florida? The job's open. There's no speculation. There's no hot seat talk anymore. Billy Napier has been fired. I kind of completely agree with the popular sentiment right now around this job. And if you haven't been paying attention, let me get you up to speed. It won't take long. The popular sentiment with this job is they're going to go after Lane Kiffin. And that's the popular sentiment because Florida's going to go after Lane Kiffin. And Lane Kiffin may end up taking the job. Now, this is a matter of much debate and speculation right now. And I'm going to get into it in just a second, but I do want to say that Pete Nakos has been doing a really good job over at On3 of updating this. I was just reading some of his work before we went on air, although I don't know why, because I could just go badger him at his desk. We work in the same building after all. And I did do that today. And so one of the things Pete noted that I think is 100% true is that hiring a coordinator or a group of 6 coach is not an option for Florida. That's just their prerogative. They have decided we're not taking a chance on a coordinator, so we're not doing what Oregon did. We're not hiring Dan Lanning and hoping it works out, even though it did work out for Oregon. But we're not doing that. We're Florida. We don't have to take a risk, and we're not going back to the G5 or group of 6 ranks because they just went to Louisiana and got Billy Napier. And some people wanted to call him Blue Chip Billy, and some people wanted to call him Sunbelt Billy, and now he's Unemployed Billy. And so the boosters are saying, we're not doing that again. Hey, man, John Summerall may be a good coach, or Alex Golesh may be a good coach, or Willie Fritz may be a good coach. Or Willie Fritz is in the Big 12 now, but they probably still don't know that. We're not going that route. We want a proven winner, and that's Lane Kiffin. And if it's not Lane, then that's Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri. Now, I would go down the list and give you 5 more names. I don't think they're getting past those 2. One of those 2 guys is probably going to be the head coach at Florida. That's really not the point of contention here. Most of the time, people are debating who's going to take the job. At Florida, at the very least, I think most people understand who's going to get offered the job. The $1 million question, in fact, the $10 or $15 million question is, will he take the job? I don't know. I have a very, very like 53%, 47% type feel on this. My feel is he will take the job. Very slightly. Very slightly. Now, last year I was like 90-10 that if they offered him the job, if they had fired Billy last year and they had offered him the job, I thought Lane was going to go. There's still like a slightly larger part of me than not that believes he would take the job. But I don't know. I don't know because it could be that his mind's changed. It could be that the landscape has changed. It could be that both things are true. It's what you got to ask yourself. Has anything really fundamentally changed here? Well, first off, we've got to ask, were we right? Was I right last year? Would he have taken the job last year? Strong indications he would have. But we can never prove that. So let's just assume I was right and he would have taken it last year. Will he take it this year? There are some people who think he would because Florida's a better job. There are other people who think that Florida is a better job, but it's not that much better that he should leave Ole Miss. There are other people who think Florida's not a better job than Ole Miss. At the very least, it's negligible. And there are some other people who probably just think Ole Miss is the best job in the world. What does Lane Kiffin think? Because he's the only candidate. Therefore, he is the only opinion that matters here. But to the people who will come in the comment section, and I respect you guys. I just told you I don't know what he's going to do. But I know I'm going to kind of get ahead of it because I assume where you're going to go with this. I know there are some people, many people, thousands of people actually, will be in my comments and they will say, why would he take that job? Why would you leave Ole Miss where you already have everything set up the way you want it to take the Florida job? And I thought Shane Matthews did a really good job. Yes, he's a former Florida player, but a lot of the stuff he laid out, he was doing either a radio show or a podcast. I mean, Shane laid out a lot of stuff that you can't really push back on all that much. He talked about how the facilities are better there. I've been in both places. Florida's got incredible facilities. They're brand new. So it's better there than it is at Ole Miss. Geography, if you prefer to live in Florida, I mean, there's some people who would prefer to live in Oxford, Mississippi over Gainesville. Most people would probably prefer Florida. But look, man, Oxford, Mississippi is a really nice place. So that may be more a matter of opinion. So I'll grant you that if you're pushing back on that. The alumni base is bigger at Florida, if that matters to you. The game day environment unequivocally is better at Florida in stadium. Now, you can go hang out in the Grove indefinitely, and that's about as amazing a scene as there is in college football. They don't decide 3rd and 8 in the Grove They decide it in the stadium. And the swamp is second to none when it comes to that. The media market proximity, again, this doesn't matter to fans. It doesn't matter to some coaches, but it may matter. But when you keep stacking that stuff on top of each other, there's a solid argument to be made there. Florida's the better job. Here's the question. Does Lane Kiffin care about any of that? That's really all that matters. The case can be made as to why, generically, a coach would leave Ole Miss for Florida, but that's a generic coach. Lane Kiffin's not generic. He is a specific person here. And the thing that I wonder, there's one word that matters here to me. It's legacy. How much does that matter to Lane Kiffin? So a couple of things I wonder. I wonder if he's made up his mind, because there's one thing for it to be a theoretical, there's another thing for it to be an actual. And you know as well as I do, any of the big decisions you've ever made in your life, you could theorize it all you want to. When someone puts a piece of paper in front of you, sign it yes or no. Only then do you really find out where your heart's at. So he may already know, or he may think he knows. That's when you'll find out. And I just wonder what legacy means to him. This is kind of the case I would make if I were Ole Miss. Yes, there are edges that Florida has, but this is 2025 college football. Those are not the edges they used to be. If this were 1997, if this were 2010, it's understandable. It's 2025. And truth be told, our NIL structure may be even better built right now than theirs is. Ole Miss was ahead of the curve and has been ahead of the curve on that front. The Florida folks would push back and say, yeah, well, how many staffers have you lost that you wanted to retain? How many have we lost down here? And we had a guy en route to being fired. Yours can stay there as long as he wants to, and he still can't retain staff. He would never have that problem here. And if we got the right coach here, the machine behind him that we'll build with NIL will dwarf anything you have. Okay, maybe that's true. How much does legacy mean to Lane Kiffin? Because right now, Lane's been in Oxford for a while, and he's at the pinnacle of his career. And if you're watching in real time, you never really know. Like you're in the good old days, you're in the prime of your career. But you got to think of it in like documentary terms. Fast forward 30 years. Your career, I would guess, is over. You're looking back on it. And there's a fork in the road. And you're either going to decide, my life is in Oxford, Mississippi. I'm the head coach at Ole Miss. And if you decide to go that route, you'll end up winning several more years at Ole Miss, and you will fundamentally alter that town, and there will be stuff named after you and buildings and streets named after you one day, if you do your job correctly. Okay? That's one path at the fork in the road. The other path is you want to find out how you would do at the University of Florida because you think you can win a national championship there, and you're not sure you can win one at Ole Miss. And that means more to you than legacy. I'm not saying either is wrong. I am quite literally asking, what matters more? That's what you'll find out. If this goes from theoretical to actual, if it's put in front of him, you have an offer in front of you to be the next head coach of the Florida Gators. Then and only then will you really find out. And everyone's got these slam dunk theories. Oh, he'll absolutely take it. Or, oh, he's not leaving. You don't know. He may not even know. Or maybe he does. But if he does, by my estimation, he hasn't told many people. So, we'll see. The good news is, whether you live in Gainesville or Oxford, flex power generators can be there for you. Oops, amongst us saw that turn. We gave away a flex power generator at Vanderbilt's game last Saturday. We uploaded the video today, if you want to check it out. The easiest trivia questions in the history of mankind. That's all you had to answer. The guy asked us, wait a second, what's the catch? There's no catch, buddy. What did we ask him? We asked him, name a Heisman winner that was under 6 feet tall. He went Manziel, ding. Who was the team in 2017 that claimed a national championship, even hung a banner in their stadium, UCF? And who was the coach that won the most at Vanderbilt? I can't remember how we worded it. Prior to Clark Lee, it was James Franklin. That was it. That was all he needed to do. We gave him a brand new generator. I can't do that with all of you, but I can say if you go to myflexpower.com/Josh Pate, they got some really good deals over there. And I know last night our power went out. I don't even know why. Don't get caught. Don't get caught in the dark. Immunity? No. There's no need to live like that. This is the modern age. This is flex power. These are flex power years here. So you can go to myflexpower.com/Josh Pate. They got you covered. Jesse, your under is screwed. I'm sorry. JP poll is out for week 9. Not rankings, not rankings, not rankings. These are not rankings at all. I think most of you are well in tune with what this is by now. We have had a shocking little amount of controversy around the JP poll recently. And it makes me proud. It makes me really proud because it makes me think most people have gotten with the program around here. There you go. These are not rankings. These are power ratings. I have the model right here. I don't always agree with the model. In fact, you're going to see right off the bat, I don't agree with the model on the number 20 team. But what we're trying to figure out is who would be favored against who on a neutral field. And if you're wondering to yourself, why does that matter? I guess to you it doesn't matter. We just happen to have fun with it. We think it's a good predictive tool. For instance, we never had Alabama below Florida State after week 1. We never dropped Texas below Oklahoma, even though the season started the way it did. Well, since then, that's made a lot of sense. But in the moment, we got criticized heavily for it. So let's dive in. Number 20, again, I can't stand behind this. The model still has Penn State at number 20. Of course, drugs. Goes without saying. I made Prez, I think, hand draw an asterisk and write the word drugs on the graphic. That's how in protest I am of my own model, putting Penn State at number 20. It's just how heavily it bakes in talent. And you understand now, most of the time that makes sense. But when a team has tapped out, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But who knows, man? Maybe Penn State. Maybe there's going to be an inspired effort second half of the year. Penn State should not be number 20, even in a power rating. They shouldn't. Louisville's at 19. Vandy is at 18. USC 17. Utah 16. Notice, by the way, Miami got beat by Louisville the other night, and everyone just trashed them for it. And they were 13.5-point favorites, and they had a bunch of turnovers. But I look at it and I say, if you have a bunch of turnovers against a top 20 team with a guy who has a coaching edge on most of the country in Jeff Brom, you should lose. Like, that's not a shocking result. And so as much as people may think, oh, Miami got too much credit for the Florida State win, they may be getting a little bit too much criticism for the Louisville loss. Yes, I had them number 1 in the commissioner's poll, and I need to justify it somehow. Let's continue. Number 15, LSU didn't move because people told us we had them underrated last week. No, we had them properly rated. So since we had them where they belonged, we don't need to move them. So they're still number 15. Texas Tech is number 14. We got Tennessee 13, Missouri 12, and Oklahoma 11. And now look at the top 10. Something notable has happened here. So Texas is the number 10 team in the country. Ole Miss is 9, and A&M is number 8. If you'll remember, and trust me, Billy Lucci does, as of the past several weeks, the model still had Texas over Texas A&M. And now we have A&M ahead of Texas. So for the first time, I think this year, the model would favor Texas A&M over Texas. So congratulations to Mike Elko. You have arrived. This was the goal you guys have been working towards. The outcome this Saturday is kind of secondary, but the primary goal of being rated ahead of Texas in the JP poll has come to fruition. Congrats, guys. Miami dropped to number 7. So they dropped 4 spots, but in terms of the raw power rating, we deducted 2 solid points. Well, the model deducted 2 solid points from Miami. That's a pretty big deduction. And frankly, and this is just my suspicion, I think the model may have dinged Miami a little bit too much. It was a multi-turnover game against a pretty good team. Now, I think what the model was baking in is that kind of performance is a hallmark of past Mario Cristobal teams. The model was thinking maybe they've moved on beyond that, but since they exhibited that they haven't coming out of a bye week, well, now we got to yank them back down to earth. And if that's what you're thinking, it makes sense. That's just a little moment between me and the model there. Let's go 5 through 1. Number 5, Georgia. Number 4, Bama. Number 3, Oregon, back up 4 spots to number 3 there. Indiana is 2, Ohio State's 1. So the heavily SEC-biased model that we have here has the Big Ten with the top 3 teams in the country? What's its angle? What do we think? Certainly Bama and Georgia are going to make a move here, right? I don't know. I'm starting to think the model doesn't really recognize conference affiliation at all, and it just rates teams blindly based on preset criteria. That's what I'm starting to think is the case. If you want to know how large the gaps are here, Georgia is 5. Ohio State's number 1. We've still got about a 4-point gap between them and number 2. Now, here's what I'm interested to find. This model is not powered by FanDuel. That's a misconception sometimes. This model is laying out these teams as it would favor them on a neutral field. Now, a lot of times it's going to very, very closely mirror what FanDuel would have. And sometimes when you just flat out don't believe one team could be favored over another one, I'll go to FanDuel and I'll say, hey, could you give me the hypothetical line just so it backs us up a little bit? But the reason I'm mentioning that is, let's say it's the Big Ten championship game. Let's say it's Ohio State versus Indiana. Do we really think Ohio State's only a 4-point favorite against Indiana? A lot of you have your own models out there. What would you make that game? The model would have Ohio State -4. What would you have? Ohio State versus Indiana. Because that's a risk. You're hanging Ohio State -4. You know you're going to take heavy Buckeye action. Now, one of the biggest lies that people have ever told about Vegas in general is that the point spreads they put out are just meant to garner equal action. That is not the case, okay? Every single week, there is a side in most games that they're going to be heavy on. And I can't think of one off the top of my head, but like there have been several examples just in the past few weeks of lines where as soon as they released it, you know they're going to take heavy money towards the favorite or towards the dog. They're just more comfortable with their position than the public position in those games. So in the Ohio State-Indiana game, if they really believe 4 should be the number, they may tack on a 0.5 point to a point towards Ohio State because they know they got to charge a premium for people to bet the Buckeyes because they're a public team, kind of like Dallas Cowboys in the NFL. But it's not going to be by much. I mean, I can tell you confidently, if FanDuel's internal numbers said Ohio State -3.5 is the real number, they're not putting Ohio State -7 out. They're not. And the reason that can't happen, if you just think this through logically, is because there are too many other sharp people out there whose numbers would spit out a true point spread, just like Vegas, just like FanDuel. A lot of times what you'll find is there's this defense mechanism that people kick into when they see that their team's not favored by as much as they think it should be, or maybe their team's an underdog. And they say, oh, that doesn't mean anything. That's not what Vegas really thinks. They're just trying to get equal action. As if the real Vegas opinion would be like 6.5 points detached from the number they put out. That never happens. Because just think it through for a second. FanDuel guys walk in the office and they look and they say, all right, our numbers suggest Ohio State about a 4-point favorite against Indiana. However, we're going to put out Ohio State -9. Well, if the true number is around Ohio State -4, there are so many sharp, model-based, predictive types out there that understand what the number should be, that if FanDuel deviated even a field goal off of what their internal numbers actually said, the number would get hammered so quickly. It happened last week. It happened with the Penn State-Iowa game last week, guys. They put Penn State minus out, and that thing crossed 0 like that because enough people picked up on the fact that they had deviated off what the true number should be too quickly. So there are 4 points right now between Ohio State and Indiana. There are 4 points between Indiana at number 2 and Texas at number 10. So the gap between number 1 and number 2, for the model's sake, is as wide as the gap between number 2 and number 10. There is a 10-point gap between number 2 and number 19. So there is not a lot of separation here. It still looks the same. It's just Ohio State has distanced themselves a little bit. You can go bet all that at FanDuel. You can't bet the model at FanDuel, but you can go bet on games at FanDuel. It's the exclusive odds provider of the show. It is where we bet the Ramen Noodle Express, which I'll give you in just a second. And we appreciate them. And there is a lot of shifting in the conference odds. I was looking at that today. I was looking at the Heisman market today. That one's starting to come into focus. But the conference championship odds, and the Big 12 specifically, fascinate me a little bit. So you can go bet it all at FanDuel. Okay, Ramen Noodle Express, and then we got to get out of here. So I got on Arkansas the other night. Arkansas plus 1.5 was the game we moved on the other night. Not so shockingly, that game crossed 0 shortly thereafter, and now Arkansas is a 1.5-point favorite, but we got him at 1.5-point dog. So Arkansas plus 1.5. We are adding these two games. Appalachian State plus 14.5. They are playing Old Dominion. And we're adding Cal plus 4.5. Cal's flying cross country to go play at Virginia Tech. We do not like Virginia Tech laying this many points right now. I think that's a Friday night game in Blacksburg. That's okay. We're going to take Cal plus 4.5. All right. The show did go over an hour and 2 minutes. The over hit by 8 minutes. And I'm going to sleep immediately when we get off air. Appreciate you guys. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. The drive to 500K continues. We'll be back Thursday night at 7 Eastern, 6 Central. Until then, for producer Jesse, director Bradley, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. Have a great remainder of your week, and God bless.